Come now, all you mangy dogs. Swab the decks and hoist the sails. The guns on board be needing some proper manning. Pieces of 8 and a fine wench on your arm. If your work be not too shoddy. Careful not to flounder too badly, though, or you may have to dance the hempen jig as we see you to Davy Jones. Jeffy, my boy, on with the show.
Welcome everybody, friends, folks, foes, and fellow pirate mateys, to our latest weekly edition, Pirate Radio Podcasts. It's episode number 345 with SRA, that's Satanic Ritual Abuse, survivor Lynne Haggerman. Before we get to her personal details and a rundown of the show particulars, let us remind you that, of course, as always, I myself am your host, the show's Chief Communications Officer, Jeffy Ryder. WPRPN.com is a website we will direct your attention to. Sign up is free. All you simply need is a username, password, and email address. From there, everything should be pretty much straightforward. If you do have any problems, Pirate One Radio at protonmail.com. That's pirate, the numeral, one radio at protonmail.com is the email address you want to take note of. That's also, in fact, how you can bounce show suggestions and guest ideas off of us, as well as become a member of our email list. And PayPal supporter. If you appreciate the work we've been doing here now over the past, this is our 10th year. So if there's one thing you can say about us, I suppose it's that we are committed, in a good way. Hopefully, not institutionally, not yet at least, but committed to the cause. And I think you'll be able to see evidence of that a little more here over the course of this week's feature show presentation. So half of everything people do offer as far as donations and the like are concerned go directly back to the grassroots, whether over on Patreon through purchase of merchandise via galacticfire.com or what have you. You can check out through the show description end of things how you can access coffee mugs, t-shirts, and the like. But half of everything goes directly back to the grassroots, very much in conjunction with the whole WWRHD, what would Robin Hood do ethos and philosophy. So liking, commenting, sharing, and remembering to hit subscription notification buttons, sending word on to friends, family, and co-workers. That's how we manage to grow and more widely flourish here via the live streaming Fifth Estate digital pirate underground. So, to the show description end of things. Definitely not for the faint of heart. SRA survivor, that's once again Satanic Ritual Abuse. Lynne Haggerman is our special feature guest this week. Subject to secret underground experimental medical horror as a child, Lynne further witnessed various forms of extreme torture, including adrenochrome and organ harvesting. Today, Lynne is an award-winning international human resource consultant and career coach, aiding small businesses to Fortune 100 companies. A devoted Christian. Other interests include independent LifeWave distributor, marathoner, and weightlifter. As always, be ready to connect live with your questions, thoughts, and comments. Lynne, we had you on board there via the audio tech check end of things over on Teams, formerly known as Skype. Hopefully you're still with us and we can get things rolling along.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, good stuff. So, LifeWave. That's one of the things that had us a little bit puzzled. We didn't get a chance to look into all that much. What does that entail exactly? What are we looking at there?
LifeWave is a wearable med bed. It's a frequency and light technology. It's a patch and it looks like a Band-Aid, but it regenerates our cells and provides healing to any part of the body or mind. And I started using it a year and a half ago, and it decreased my PTSD and anxiety symptoms by 70% from my background, which is huge. Um, Also, in the meantime, I run faster. I can lift heavier weights. I have a lot of fat loss. Used to wear glasses, now I don't. So it's a reverse age med bed product, and it's helped me so much. I want to help others. So that's why I started being a distributor.
That is incredible. Who suggested or recommended it to you?
Michael Jaco. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. He has a podcast too. He's former CIA and a Navy SEAL. And he was the very first show I gave my testimony on for the first time ever. And that was on March 4th of last year. I gave a 5-minute testimony, and then he had me on a month later for a full hour testimony. And he's the one who introduced me to the product.
Now, let's see. I'm just trying to rack my brain to place him as based on the details that you've provided us with here. Did he have anything to do with that movie that came out last year, the Freedom movie? You must have heard of that.
The Sound of Freedom
Sound of Freedom.
movie. He had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
He has his own Rumble channel.
Yeah.
That's his name, Michael Jaco, and he probably has, I think, 120 followers, although 120,000, although he's been suppressed. So he does a regular podcast, and just recently they let him back on YouTube.
That is wild. Yeah, that's just we've been playing this ongoing cat and mouse game with YouTube now for years. Unfortunately, they're definitely, if there's one thing you can say about them, it's they're certainly not all that pro free speech. So now you've been really active over on Rumble, and I think you do have a YouTube presence as well, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that front, but uh, when did you get started then yourself exactly with the whole social media end of things? Was it just as of last year? Is that right?
Just as of last year, in June of last year. And I started a YouTube channel 2 weeks ago, primarily to promote the LifeWave product,
Mm-hmm.
because I think if I spoke about my background, I'd be kicked off. So I just try to be careful what I post. But I started YouTube last June. The Lord asked me to start it and to start doing one podcast a week. And that has since grown. So I've met many amazing people. Like recently, I had Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend on, and I've had just many interesting people who would have thought I would be friends with Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend, but it's an interesting world we live in. Just many interesting people.
Sorry, we're just getting things. We're just getting things straightened out via Facebook and Telegram. So you might have
Sure.
had there's a little bit of a audio bleed that could have come your way there for a few moments. Judith Very Baker, I guess, is who we're talking about. Is that not the case?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
who we're talking about. Yeah,
Oh.
she's a wonderful woman.
She's amazing, and we've got a couple of her books here in the library that she's put out over the years, and yeah. So speaking of Oswald and the Kennedy assassination, Robert Morningstar, we've got to give him his props here, of course, and thank him for having you guesting,
Yes.
making room for you on his show just a couple of weeks ago as well. And that's how we first managed to come into contact with one another. So how did
Yes.
did that booking come your way?
There's a woman who reached out to me. So I had um, another person on a podcast, Dr. Juliet Engel, who's also an MK Ultra survivor, and she recommended that I get in touch with a woman named Johanna, and she lives in New York and only uses the landline and doesn't use any computers, and she knows the world. And she's just started giving me people to talk to and to be on their shows, and Robert was one of them.
All right, so there we go. That's excellent. Much well done, Johanna.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now Missouri, I guess, is your home state. Now I don't know how long
Yes.
you've been there exactly, but we like to get into your background, all and ultimately, of course, the take us back to your childhood. Have you always been a resident of Missouri, or not?
So I've lived different places, but always in the United States.
Okay, so you've been around. Uh,
Yeah.
to how many states have you seen over the course of your life to this point?
Um, quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe a third of the states. I just traveled internationally for the first time in my life last year. I went to Punta Cana. I won a trip through LifeWave, an all expense paid trip, and I had never had an actual vacation in my life, so it was quite a bit of fun, actually.
Punta Cana, where can we find that on the map?
Dominican Republic.
Oh wow, was it and 1 week, 2 weeks?
It was 1 week, well, a few days. So right after the week of the election, actually.
And this is all because of the success that you found with your
Yes,
LifeWave
yes.
products.
I'm helping so many
Oh
people. It's
wow.
just, it really makes me
Hmm.
happy.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm really, uh, I'm happy now just to hear about how this has impacted your life. And also, we'll talk about this more behind the scenes, I suppose, after the show or at some other time when we're not live streaming. But we've got sponsors for our news streams that we put together every week, but nothing as far as the feature end of things is concerned. So we're always looking for quality products. And if people such as yourself can testify to this product's benefits, which I mean, you said it helped to reduce. It's just a bracelet that you wear, and it ends up helping
No,
you
it's
reduce 70% of your PTSD. Or
it's a patch.
oh, patch. Okay, like a like a
So
like a nicotine patch, like some people would wear.
yeah, yeah, you could call it that, but there's no drugs or chemicals in it. It uses light therapy and frequency. So it's uh, it's completely natural, but it is a wearable med bed. Our regenerative cells don't need a diagnosis. They can repair absolutely anything. They made us and they can fix us, which is why I've had head to toe regeneration, age reversal, and so has everyone that I've helped. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. We just need some new cells, regenerative cells, to go to work to fix us. And it's a beautiful thing watching people be in pain and not be in pain and have these horrible disease states, and then they don't. And it fills my heart with joy because when I was little, I would help the children survive that I could. And it reminds me of my childhood, reaching out to people and doing whatever I can to try to help them and get them healed and feeling better.
That is just that's excellent. I mean, this is the sort of thing that the world needs more of. Obviously, positive stories that impact people's lives in a positive way. There's far too much darkness, clearly, far too much suffering and misery. So, yeah, we'll talk more about this
Sure.
at some other time. Although I will end it in saying simply this: Nikola Tesla, you may have heard, well, two things. Nikola Tesla, essentially what he talked about. He said, if you want to find the truth to the universe, you need to understand the nature of vibration and frequency. That's,
That's right.
this is what he said. So, and then secondly, just, your thoughts within this context of things, the impact that Wi-Fi technology or 5G that has on us. Is that a good thing, or maybe there's a few red flags that we're seeing there on that front?
That's a definite bad thing. And as a matter of fact, two of our patches, when they're worn on the back of the neck and underneath the belly button, serve as a Faraday cage, and it protects people from Wi-Fi, 5G, radiation, all of those things. So, we don't have to suffer the way we have been. They've withheld, overall, I believe there's been 6,500 patents that have been withheld from us, but LifeWave has been in business for 20 years and have this amazing technology available now.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's take things back then to how this all got started, as far as your life history, the story of what you were made to endure as a young girl. How is it that you managed to fall into these predators' hands?
My mother sent me. There is generational pedophilia on my mother's side. Since I've been talking, I've become friends with Kathy O'Brien. Some of your audience
Yep.
might be
No,
familiar with
I
her.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's generational pedophilia on my mother's side. My dad was an alcoholic and a workaholic, so he was never home, never knew anything that was going on. And she hated me from the day I was born. I'll never know why, and till the day she died. And she had me go to a neighbor's house, which was a child trafficking ring, and it was a regional house. And at the house, I would see um, people from enforcement that were customers, politicians, business people, people in religious garb. There was an adrenochrome harvesting room in the basement. And you'll rarely hear me use the word child sex trafficking or sexual abuse. That's an adult word with adult connotations. I speak from the little ones, the little girl in me that survived. I speak for the little ones, many that did not survive. And I'm a voice to the voiceless. And little ones, they don't think in terms of that. It's physical and mental torture. And simultaneously, I was taken to a U.S. university medical center where above ground there were slave auctions to pedophiles, and then below ground they would experiment on the children. And that was in conjunction with the CIA, who have since released, for example, in December 2024, 1,200 new pages of documents where they admit to their MK Ultra experiments at the U.S. University medical centers. I know it's worldwide though, and in conjunction with the medical centers. So that was my childhood. And then today, as you mentioned, things are different. I live a much different life. Praise God.
Yeah. So, and when did you become a Christian?
Um, Probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
But while you were enduring this this torture, um, yeah, I think was it not the case that you would be you would go some other place psychologically. It was so traumatic, and so has and that's one of the things that they try to accomplish as well. Is it not, like a personality split, so that people, um well, maybe hopefully you can explain it better yourself, but there you had, what how did this impact you on that level?
So actually, I did go places. It wasn't psychologically though. I actually did, and today I still do. One thing that they didn't take into consideration was they actually gave us what I would consider superpowers, things that other people are incapable of doing, that they weren't aware was going to happen. But whenever I was little, so this happened when I was from the time I was born till I was 5 years old. That's the time that this happened. And during that time, I would see God. He was always there. Jesus was always there. I would see angels. male warrior angels. I would see beautiful female angels that would soothe the children. I would see demons. Every evil person had a demon either hooked to them or inside of them. And when things got really bad, Jesus would personally take me to heaven. And there's a Psalm 23 that talks about the green pastures. I played there with Jesus. Revelation talks about the sea of glass. I would play kickball. God likes to play soccer with the children. And so I would play on the sea of glass with him. And to this day, I still go to heaven. To this day, I still see God and I still see Jesus. I will still see demons and I will still see angels. So it's it wasn't a psychological. I know that a lot of people will talk about that psychological places that they went,
Mm-hmm.
but it was real. That's actually where I
Well,
went and still do today.
your soul must have left your body then, is what we're talking about,
That's
yes?
exactly right.
Okay.
My body stayed so they could do whatever they wanted to it, but the real me, my soul, my spirit, whatever you want to, was gone. It was absolutely gone.
And yeah, so and the people, the demonic affliction, or people that had demons. I mean, I personally believe we are all demonically possessed. It might sound a little strange to you, but let me clarify. We have like spiritual energy or soul capacity. We're known as containers, I guess, like the ETs or whoever higher, you know, certain celestial beings regard us as containers. And it seems we're containers of some life energy, souls. In Asia, I guess they call it ki here in Asia. I'm over in South Korea. So,
Okay.
yeah. But the ancient Greeks used to refer to it as eudaimonia. Happiness was what it was known as. Koine Greek, in the Christian tradition, Koine
Yeah.
Greek. So it meant good demon within. That was happiness, right?
Mm.
The good demon within, not the angry, bad, dark one, obviously. But this is what you saw. You saw people, they were possessed in the worst kind of way then, clearly.
Yes, and there's a distinct difference. So let me describe the angels
Mm-hmm.
first. There
Okay.
were male angels that were the warrior angels, very big, beautiful clothing, weapons, very strong. And then the female angels would have on gowns, and each child would have a female angel. They were very mothering and very soothing, and something would happen when they would lay hands on a child. It would, including me, seem to soothe you mentally, soothe the pain some. And the little girl in me would call them the shh shh angels, like they're there,
Mm-hmm.
because they were so comforting. And the demons, now they have been burned in hell, so they don't wear clothes. They don't have any clothes because they're gone. And they could either be, if you picture like a bunch of charcoal stuck together that form the shape of a torso and arms and hands, they could be like that. Some would look, I would say, reptilian. Um, Baphomet, I would see Baphomet. He was in the adrenochrome harvesting rooms. So he would be both at the trafficking house and I would see him at the university too. But still to this day, I will see, and it's not all the time because I think you'd go crazy if you saw it all the time. But I will still see demons either on people or come out of people, or I'll see them walking around,
Hmm.
and I'll see angels too.
That is really amazing. So, I mean, clearly, you're a very historically there were people known as sensitives. Like intuitive, psychic sensitives, I guess is what they refer to them back in the day, like 100 some odd years ago. Maybe some people still use that term. I think it's appropriate in many ways for certain people, perhaps such as yourself. How would you describe yourself in this context? And exactly, is sensitive applicable, or you don't quite agree
So
with that?
I've not put a name on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's so many names for so many things. I'm sure they're all accurate. The only name I've given myself is, or I know that I am, is I'm very prophetic. I know things that are going to happen before they happen, and I'm also a seer. I will have visions, and see things that are in the past or in the future while I'm just right here in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So those words I'm familiar with and know that I am.
Okay.
And again, I consider this gifts from what happened to me as a child. I also have 44 times the auditory acuity of others and 44 times the visual acuity of others. So I see a lot of things that other people don't, which, for example, makes me very, very successful present day because I do a lot of investigations, discrimination, harassment of all kinds.
Mm-hmm.
And I always get my man or woman because I read people like a large print book under a magnifying glass, and I'm a human lie detector because I read people so well.
Mm-hmm.
So that served me well. And I got that as a child, that ability.
And as you say, they didn't know necessarily what they were doing at the time,
That's right.
and what they were actually creating. Although there were there were quite a few young people that I don't know how many were you at times. Would you be in the company of other young victims?
At the university, that's where the most were. I would say at the trafficking house, maybe up to maybe 20 at a time, maybe more. At the university,
Jeez.
every time I would go, there were tons of them.
That's,
And they would be separated into those that had homes to go to and those that did not.
right.
And the ones that did not were tortured to death. And above ground at the pedophile auctions, I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children. And then below ground, the ones that were executed, because I call it a Holocaust down there. And if you can imagine rows and rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of children on metal, like surgical beds with tubes coming out for the adrenochrome harvesting. And there's just a lot of children, and the majority didn't make it.
You saw this up to the age of 5.
Yes.
How did you escape ultimately? How were you able to win your freedom? Did somebody free you?
It's a really simple story. My parents got a divorce, and so my mom moved much further away to a town my grandmother lived in, and my grandmother had no idea, her mom, what was happening. And there was something about that change in a geographic location that just stopped it all.
Hmm.
Now, once we moved, the neighbor was a pedophile in his 80s, and mom would have me go there while she would sit a few feet away in the kitchen table smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee.
Jeez.
Um, but then she had to stop because I got to the age where I could speak. And I knew she was, afraid. She had to be afraid of going to jail or prison. And so she stopped making me go. And I believe that I had um, people following or watching me for a while, but there was something about that change in location and the presence of my grandmother that wasn't involved that changed everything.
All right. So you're made to endure all of these horrific um, things, of course, up into that age, and then the memories were largely suppressed for quite some time. Is that correct or not?
Yes, so it is. So I call it a gift from God. When it stopped at the one pedophile's house, when it all fully stopped, it was like 95% of my brain was just wiped, just absolutely wiped. And that enabled, so I had 5% of my memories, but no more. That enabled me to quasi function in society. My entire life, I knew something was really, 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 really wrong with me, but I didn't know what because I didn't have my memories. And then in 2011, I had the first repressed memory, and I still do have repressed memories to this day.
You haven't recovered all of them.
No,
Uh,
I'm not sure when it's going to end, actually.
the recovery.
Yeah.
Okay, two related questions then. One regarding hypnotherapy, whether or not you've opted for that route or not? And secondly, what of this whole business regarding so-called false memory syndrome? Is that, I think that's what it's referred to as.
Yeah, there's something about that. So the primary technique, the only technique in terms of therapy that I've used is called EMDR,
Mhm.
and that has been very, very effective. When the first repressed memory started, I was going through a divorce at a time and seeing a therapist to help me through. And what I did not know was that she was a nationally recognized trauma therapist.
Uh-huh.
And thank God for that. And so she helped me understand and helped me start um, processing through the memories and getting the trauma out, because when you have a repressed memory, it's not only the memory comes back, you have a photographic memory, but everything comes back. Your body responds and feels exactly like it did at the time. My body will morph. I'll have my wrists go flat from restraints. I'll have cuts appear on my body. I'll have IV marks appear on so your body physically goes into what it did before. That's part of why it's not made up. And then the other thing, when I first started remembering, the memories are so horrific. I fought them for quite a while, and I kept telling her this can't be true. People would not do this to a child. People will not do this to children. They would not do this to animals. But God was so good to me, and I mean, he still is, of course, but within 24 hours, he would affirm the memory in the physical. So, for example, one time I had a memory that I had a cat when I was little named Blackie, because the cat was black because I was so little. And they hung Blackie on a clothesline. And they would do all kinds of physical and mental torture to get compliance, because no human being would remotely do what they made children do. So they got compliance out of fear, and that was also part of the MK Ultra brainwashing. So once they hung Blackie, then they hung me. And they didn't hang me in a way to where I would die, but I didn't know any different. And when I had that memory, I remember thinking they wouldn't do that. That can't be real. That none of this can be real. And I went home and was flipping channels, and I flipped, and there was a cartoon where they were hanging a black cat on a clothesline. So that is how God has confirmed to me, because in the beginning, few years, I was like, this can't be. And I would always see something in the physical. And then finally, I quit kicking against the goads, is what the scripture calls it. And I just quit fighting it, because I knew this was true and this was real. And as soon as I accepted it, I healed a lot faster.
I guess as we all do, with whatever it is that's afflicting us, whatever burden that we have upon us. Yeah. So big shout out to Sonia Galactic, who's there actively chiming in via D Live and YouTube. We just boosted your volume a little bit. There was people could hear you, but not at an optimal level. So encourage all of the other lurkers to log in so that they can become part of the conversation as well via YouTube, Facebook, D Live, Home Network TV, and Telegram. So, in case people are wondering, we of course are here this week with Pirate Radio Podcasts, episode number 345. Our special guest, SRA survivor, that's Satanic Ritual Abuse survivor, Lynne Haggerman. So, have you written a book yet? I don't think we've seen anything about a book. That's probably something that would be in the works, though, one would imagine.
I have not written a book. I have part of processing out trauma is handwriting, because it activates the logical analytical side of your brain and takes the emotion out. So I have enough material to write a book. It's on my heart to. I have not published anything yet. I also want to write children's books, because I'm trying to do. I have a website called Q, the letter Q, and the word grit, GRIT.org. And it's a plan that God gave me to help the children once they're rescued from the tunnels and rescued above ground, plus to help adults with trauma of any kind. Vets, losing a child young, any trauma is trauma is trauma. And so I have those resources available too, and to try to help others.
That's right. And that's Q Grit is the website once again. Now, just to be clear, the Q, that does it or does it not have anything to do with the so-called the QAnon phenomenon that's taken off in recent years?
It does not.
Oh, okay.
Whenever, so God had me name the website, and I had not heard of Q actually. Well, because he had me name it years before I started talking. He started giving me the plan, and I would just write it out because I knew what he said he wanted to do, and I had no idea how he was going to do it and how any of this would net out. But so he named it, and he actually named it after there's an old John Wayne movie called True Grit. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a little feisty girl that goes after the bad guys, with their guns. That's kind of how the little girl in me feels.
Good one.
That,
Good.
we're,
Yes.
we're we're going after the bad guys
Yeah.
now. The hunted has now become the hunter.
Yeah. That's right. So, okay. Um, what what especially then would you like to address here before we, continue on? Is there anything we've missed out on so far or haven't covered in sufficient detail that you would like to address or unpack for the listeners? And by the way, just to let people know, yourself included, not only do we have the live streaming end of things here, we also, of course, upload to BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. YouTube and Facebook, it's a little problematic in the sense that uh, I think this is during the pre-show that we touched on this. They're a little too, censor heavy-handed with the censoring of content, unfortunately. So that's an ongoing issue with a lot of people that put these live streams together. Sadly. Um, but yeah, anything that we've missed out on to this point, or that you would really like to drive home to emphasize or elaborate upon? Go a little deeper.
So sure. So one thing that I haven't touched on
Mm-hmm.
yet is the satanic ritualistic abuse part, the
Ooh,
conventions.
ooh, yeah,
So
dark. I was not.
so
I just to briefly put the brakes on this. This is a shadow, and it's just so dark, but it's something that we need to talk about, and it's not something I like to do. Honestly, I told this. I kind of brought this up with our news listeners just a few days ago, but I guess if it can be done in the right spirit, and you are leading the charge here. I mean, I think as you've said, like we all suffer trauma and stress to one extent or the next. Some people more severely than others, but yeah, go. It's Nietzsche, Carl Jung. I don't know if you know much about either Jung or Nietzsche, but
yes.
the darkness, the staring into the abyss, hunting monsters, things and shadow work, of course. But and Jordan Peterson, I think, if you've listened to much of what he's has to offer, that we need to it's for us to be fully integrated and balanced, and to I guess fulfill ultimately our life purpose. We need uh, to do that so-called shadow work. So, but I'm sorry. I just had to. I had to. I'm not sure if you say vent, but just yeah, just to clarify for the record, these. It's a terrible thing to talk about, and so, and not for the faint-hearted. And I think if we've tried to make it clear that if people have children within you know, in the rooms that they might not want to have them listening to this. Obviously, I wouldn't you agree? It's not
Yes,
for yeah.
yes,
Okay.
I would agree.
All right.
I absolutely
Okay.
would agree.
All right.
And, God bless your audience for hanging in, because I know this is very, very hard to hear. I know it's hard to say, but I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission because I have a voice now, and I'm here to help the children. This is all about the children, bottom line. That is the reason why I'm speaking. And that's whether because it's past time to stop this. This is a scourge worldwide. It's not just I'm in the United States, it's worldwide. And we all know we've been at war, and the war is for the children. And it's time in the war for people to understand, who it is that we're all fighting for, and hoping that we're fighting for, and what's happening. So my message, I know it's a dark topic. My message, I try to make it a message of hope, because it's like you mentioned, we've all had trauma, and trauma is trauma is trauma. And I I feel like my message of hope is, if I can go through what I went through and be a sane person today who can logically talk to you and share information, then you guys can do it too. Anyone who's listening who's had trauma and they're still having, issues and problems, and frankly, every time I do a podcast, it blesses me to no end that people will reach out to me on that website, send me emails, trust me enough to share their stories. And on the website, I list all the different things I've done to heal. So, what I did to get to where I am today, so that way, you guys can too. And so that's my message, is a message of hope. But part of helping the children is the adults need to understand what's happening. And on my website, I give tons and tons of ideas for people to help, because I get asked all the time, I want to help. What can I do? What can I do to help the children? And there's so much that can be done, because as more, we're seeing small rescues beginning. We're going to need housing. We're going to need good organic food. We're going to need all kinds of therapies, like animal therapy and equine therapy and gardening. And there's all kinds of things that people can do. And I encourage each person to search their heart and, know the gifts that you've been given, and start just with a step as to what you could do whenever you're called, and there's an opportunity, locally to help out, because that's what worldwide, this is our time. And I believe it's go time for us, and that we can lock arms and stop this scourge. But before we can stop it, people need to understand the problem, so that way they know what can be done about it. So that's part of why I share the story.
So, yeah, giving a voice to the voiceless. I've long, stood by that, and it's as far as incorporating that into my life's purpose as well. People, for example, of Tibet, uh, and elsewhere. The underdog, basically. So, um, if you see something, say something. That was one of the first things that came to mind, actually, as a solution. Watching, and I was thinking maybe with the way you were unpacking things, that maybe your grandmother had, or did she actually play more of a? You were talking about this being generational. Was she
Yes.
affected? Was she impacted? Your mom maybe suffered in the same way. Is that what we're
Yes.
talking about here?
That's exactly what we're talking about. So, her dad, so my grandma, and we only know so many generations back, but people don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a pedophile. It's something happened to them, but then they chose to continue that. But my mom, the story was told when I was growing up, how my grandma got married when she was 13 years old, because she got pregnant by grandpa and had to. Well, grandpa's a pedophile. What I mean? Grandma was 13 years old. It's not a happy family story, but they acted like it was just like a normal story you tell at dinner time. with smiles. And I just, looking back, it's like, ugh. But so anyway, then, so grandpa was a pedophile, my mom's dad. And I know that she was horribly affected by what happened to her. Again, it doesn't excuse things that she did because, whenever we're adults, we get to make choices. But I know that when that happens to a person, it causes severe mental and emotional, psychological issues. So, and it has to go back generations because again, people don't wake up one day and just decide to do this.
So just to be clear, your grandmother was impregnated by her grandfather?
No, by my grandfather. Sorry, she's so.
Oh, your mother was impregnated at the age of 13 and married at the age of 13.
Let me back up because I
Okay.
know I'm mixing words up. So yeah, okay.
Well, I'm just not
So
hearing.
my paternal grandfather got my paternal or my maternal grandfather got my maternal grandmother pregnant when she was 13. Then my maternal grandfather was a pedophile to my mom.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just yeah. And then this was openly discussed at the dinner table. This is an open.
Well,
It was
but
not.
what was the only part that was openly discussed was just the it was said in a charming way how grandma got pregnant when she was 13 and had to get married. And yeah, but that was like the family story. I can't even explain it.
Right. Now it's said that there's close to, it's around 800,000 kids that go missing every year in America. Is that not the case?
That's that's
But
right.
but
That's
but
right.
there now there's a significant number of those who are then later, they turn up in one form or another, return home. Many of them don't even have homes to begin with. And those are the ones that, as you pointed out earlier, are definitely a lot more vulnerable to the point of ultimately even being marked for death under the most horrific sort of circumstances because they've got no support network, nobody who's going to ask any questions as to where they've just where they've gone to, how they've disappeared. And this is one of the problems that we've found clearly. We hear, for anyone that was paying attention, with the Biden administration, the number that's been put out is it's around 300,000 uh, children that crossed through these open borders that they allowed to be in place and that they're completely unaccounted for.
Yes, and I had on one of my podcasts. So I have a Rumble channel called the Lynne Scott Haggerman Show, and which is my full name. And I had JJ Carroll on, who's a retired high-ranking officer, Border Patrol. And he said he's done extensive interviews of people along the border. He said the number is more like 900,000
Okay. Oh, geez. With the Biden administration.
with the Biden administration alone.
Oh my
Yes.
God. So that's,
And
oh
so
geez.
yeah, so it's a lot. And of course, we've, been hearing from Trump's administration how, well, when RFK Jr. just said, was it 2 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
that the depart, the United States is the largest trafficker of children in the world, and he said that the HHS was the vector of the whole trafficking, child trafficking. So it's right there out in the open, praise God.
Absolutely. Was that, and let's hope that more continues to be done on this front, not just not just empty talk, of course, but
Right.
decisive action that helps to liberate those currently in bondage. So, man, I tell you, was this on the Dr. Phil show? I know that he was asked about
Yes.
chemtrails and it was during that same interview. Is that right?
So this was actually during a cabinet meeting.
Okay,
I think it was just a week ago.
yeah,
I have an X feed,
that's right.
which is Hagerman 91741.
Mm-hmm.
I have to write it down because it's, that's what they gave me. But so it's on my X feed for people to look up. But it was during the cabinet meeting, and he
Okay.
just said it, just said it.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, when you talked about Dr. Phil, that reminded me of something else. So most people are not aware. Borders are Tom Homan on a Dr. Phil show in February self-deputized every U.S. citizen to hunt for these missing children.
I heard about that.
And
That's right.
yes, and I have a page on my website on the qgrit.org. When you said see something, say something,
Yep.
that's what Tom Homan said, and recommends that we call ICE. And I have an 800 number there too.
Okay.
And here's where I net out on that. Overall, none of us trust our governments, but I believe that now we have the current administration has been more pro-children, anti-trafficking than anybody else. Plus, we have two executive orders taking away traffickers' assets as part of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I for one, am behind. You can go to ICE and you can call anonymously and fill out reports anonymously too
Mm-hmm.
if you see something. So
Well, that's great. That is great. So, yeah, we've got your contact information here in the
good.
QGrit and then .org and then lynnhaggerman.com along with your email address. So, and off of your main website, you've got all of your I think you've got your X and Rumble
Yeah,
channels linked right there.
yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, just trying to do a little multitasking behind the scenes as we continue along here with Lynne Haggerman, episode number 345 of Pirate Radio Podcast. We might be getting cut off here shortly too, just to let you know. Oh, geez! In fact, we've overshot the mark. I'm surprised the feed didn't already end. It's sometimes they cut us off a little early, but we might have to reconnect here. We typically like to put together 90-minute shows, and if you can come up with any really any further helpful ideas or comments or backstory, I'd like to know a little bit more about your the trauma expert that you worked with and connected with, and how that went, and the fact that, as you said, this is quite having to relive. I don't know if it was, as you said, hypnotherapy exactly, or not, but that you actually would go into a state where you were being taken back to that childhood period of your life where you felt as if you were being strapped down and actual scars were appearing,
Yes.
wounds,
And
and
that's normal.
that's wild.
So I know I have people in the audience because they'll be reaching out to me after your show saying you told my story. So anyone who's survived trauma like this, it's happened to all of us. But yes, I'll have those marks appear. And the like to give an example how it works. As a marathoner, I run all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was running, and all of a sudden I just lost the use of my right leg. So anything can trigger. I have such, 5 years of 24/7 trauma is a lot, and anything can trigger it. A doorknob, I just never do know. And I just lost the use of my right leg. So I had to drag it home,
Jeez.
drag it around so I could get to my therapist. And she uses the EMDR therapy. And I have this on my website too, but if people are interested in that, it's called emdria.org, and you can find a therapist in your area if you're interested in checking that out. But anyway, so I had to process through, and I had to remember because it won't stop until I remember. And what I remembered was in the trafficking house in the basement, the man who was in charge would have on the wall a whole row of casts, leg casts of different sizes to put them on the children so they wouldn't run.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be dragging a leg around. And so I remembered that. And once I did, then my legs started working again, and I could process out that memory and all the emotional crying and being
Right.
upset about, and then all that's gone. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I can talk to you now like a normal, sane person,
Mm-hmm.
because I processed out the trauma. And people who haven't processed out the trauma, they'd be in a puddle crying by now. They wouldn't be able to do it. So it's really important. It's like pus in a wound. It needs to come out.
A lot of confusion too, I would imagine, with people that are not able to reconnect and to process the the terrible things that have impacted them and scarred their psyches. Quick question here related to this. Do you think that there was something done to you at that age where the the people who were inflicting the torture upon you, um, do you think that there was something done in a hypnotic way, perhaps, where they shut, like we know how MK Ultra works in this manner, that certain things can either turn your psychic or mental state on, or have a shift occur, or shut you down based on, in some manner. Was something done to you at that age where it was like a lid being put on everything that had occurred?
So I know what you're talking about, because I've heard other survivors talk about similar things. At one level, I don't think so, but in another level, yes. So
Okay.
one of my memories when I was in the university underground
Mm.
is, after every, I don't know if it would be after a session or after a day, but I would be torture forced to relive in detail everything that happened that day, absolutely everything. And it was a torturous, threatening. If I didn't remember every single detail, the consequences were beyond horrific. Well, while I was taught, I was always hooked up. So you mentioned Christian and the Montauk. I was always hooked up with the metal hat on my head and
Mm-hmm.
the tubes coming out, and hooked up to medical equipment. So they were constantly watching my brain, because that was what the
Mm.
CIA said MK Ultra was about. They were going to go into our brains where no man had gone before, and that's from the CIA documents themselves.
Hmm.
So what they would do when I would remember, they were watching what part of my brain remembered, and
Mm-hmm.
they'd fry it. They just fry it. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, thinking I would never remember.
Right.
And but what they didn't realize, I think they didn't factor God into it, because these people have no concept of him. They're Luciferian Satanists.
Mm.
But I remember.
And you know, there is talk of the God part of the brain, is there not?
I don't know.
Well, oh, this is, aren't you happy now?
Yeah.
you can,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
there's
I'm
one
curious.
takeaway thing that
Yeah.
the Jaffe and the pirate crew here managed to provide you with, gift you with, present
There you
that,
go.
yeah. So the God part of the brain, I'll have to look into that myself. I think I've heard of that. So, but that was kind of my next question, that not only were you being used for strictly, it seems, these sick people's sexual depravities, but then you were passed on to these other type facilities where is more extreme stress, trauma, and all under the guise, presumably, of medical research.
That's right. And when the recently released documents that I mentioned, people can look those up. They came out through National Security Archives was
Mm-hmm.
the name they came out of. But in those documents, the CIA talked about how they needed to recruit medical people to do this, to do these experiments on U.S. citizens, adults and children. And at first, some people were like, this is unethical. This is, you can't do this. But they found that the majority, they only wanted the best of the best in the United States. They found that the majority were more than willing to do that to advance science and to advance big pharma. So they were the ones under there doing the experimentation. And I remember them. They were garbed in like surgical garb and face masks and the surgical hats. Now the CIA, they were in their suits. And then there was a flat screen TV too, where people were watching, which I assume was the CIA also. But
What time frame are we talking then? Historic? This would be like late 70s or early 70s.
so when it comes to time frame, I think that the CIA had the congressional hearings in the 70s or 80s when they got caught the first time, and they said, "Oops, sorry, never mind, didn't mean
Yeah.
it," and then
Well,
they just
right.
continued.
When were you
But if you mean
5?
like for me,
Yeah,
so
for you
yeah,
personally.
let me share that. Before I started speaking, I was talking to God about, what did he want me to share and how much,
Hmm.
and he said to share absolutely anything, except three things. And he said one was he didn't want me to name the name of the university.
Hmm.
And I believe all this is for my safety, kind of bottom line.
Hmm.
But he said to just say anywhere USA, anywhere world, because that's the truth. And then he also said not to share the name of the town where I was trafficked, because again, I could say any town USA, any town world, because this is so prolific. And
Hmm.
then he also asked me not to share any dates or ages or ranges or that sort of thing.
Well, it happened
So.
up to the point where you were 5 years old, so I'm not sure if you've disclosed. I'm just trying to do the math here as far as the time frame. I don't know how old you are right now. Maybe mid 40s.
See, and that's something he just didn't want me to
Even talk
provide
about
any
your age.
clarity.
Maybe
Yeah.
you're younger than that. I don't know. I'm sorry. It's hard to
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
people's. So I could do some. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But that's the only thing really, and I can totally respect um, the other items that you touched upon there. That not a problem. If that's amazing. So, and when God then does speak to you or connect, like a lot of people talk about spirit,
Hmm.
God, and almost use those two terms interchangeably. How does that how does that play out? You just hear a voice in your head that says, hey Lynn, listen up. I got something to share with you.
Yeah. So, uh, so God can talk all kinds of ways, and actually with the Trinity. So God has His own voice, and Jesus is a different um, um, spirit, if you want to use that word. He's God too. He has a different voice, and Holy Spirit has another voice too. So all three are present with me all the time. And sometimes I can see them, sometimes I can't. And when they speak, it can be spirit to spirit, my spirit with their spirit, and sometimes they speak audibly. So I've heard them both ways.
Well, that's
And it
it.
can be at any time, it can
Mm-hmm.
be any time. The main way they speak to me is through the Bible, which is the word. But then they can speak like one time. So whenever I run a lot, and I can see in front of me Jesus, and he's always on his horse. His
Hmm.
horse is white. His horse is named Apollo. And then Holy Spirit's always running to the left of me, and God's always on my right, on his throne. And one day there was construction, and I always run toward traffic for safety. And
Right.
I was kind of nervous about the construction. And all of a sudden, Jesus was off his horse and right beside me on my right side running. And because he's a gentleman, and gentlemen will be on the outside to
Yes.
protect in
Correct.
case a truck
Right.
comes,
That's
but
right.
protect the women and children. And so he was instantly there, and I heard him speak out loud. And this is and they don't speak audibly that often. I mean, it's a big deal when they do, but he spoke out loud. And the first thing he said was, "I was tortured too." That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even thinking about this. I was just running. And so I started talking to him about it. And I said, well, did you have body memories? Do you have body memories? Because, that's where like I'll lose a leg or IV marks will appear or cuts or whatever. And he said no. And I said, well, you were man, because he was man and God.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Lynn, he goes, I was God. And he goes, I am God. And I said, well, how did you forget? Because at that time I thought healing meant forgetting. And now that's the farthest thing from the truth. But I thought healing meant forgetting, getting it out of your mind, putting it behind you, pretending it never happened, trying to move forward with a happy life. And so I said, well, how did you forget? And he goes, I didn't forget. They wrote a book about it, which of course is the Bible.
Right. Yeah.
But at that time, that's an example of him speaking audibly
And manifesting too. That was something else
and
that I was.
manifesting
That's
too.
right. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right.
Manifesting too. Yeah.
But,
And that's, as a little girl, this was normal 24/7 because they were always there, just like I could see you, I could see them all the time. But as an adult, things change somehow. But so it's not as much, but I still do.
the cat example was another that you offered. During the first part of our conversation here, Blackie, as you referred to him.
Blackie.
Yeah. So, something that Carl Jung would refer to as synchronicity. Others perhaps kind of like a synchro mysticism, perhaps. But I agree. It's really important to pay attention to the things that do manifest in our lives in a physical sense, and to be open to the possibility of spiritual wonders, things that people who live entirely in the realm of the six senses, the material, empirical world, that they have so much of a problem in acknowledging may may actually be a part of what this human existence is even more on a deeper level all about, and that does impact our lives on a day-to-day basis, and not least of which is, of course, is our ability to make decisions, free choice, whether for good or for evil, I suppose, for less wise decisions, shall we say. So
Yes.
yes. All right. LifeWave, is that the product, once again, that we're quite interested in? I had no idea what that was all about until speaking with you, so I'm glad we got that straightened out. What do you think, as far as, have any of the perpetrators that were part of what you had to endure, have they been held to account, as far as you may have any idea? Perhaps this is something you're not able to talk about. The Trump administration, I think, as you quite accurately touched upon here, is the only presidential administration that I'm aware of has ever made this an issue. I've never even heard about it. Like, as far as like with a lot of other things, ufology, now kind of entering into more public discourse with congressional testimony. The chemtrail business, like, yes, we're actually going to, uh, investigate. There might be a DARPA role, secret programs taking place where we're being targeted. So uh, maybe this is something that you can't really get into, as far as anyone that who has been held to account, as far as the people who once again inflicted the trauma upon you and any of the others that you saw. But this is just such a horrific, to think that this actually takes place. And another thing too is the political angle, as far as political blackmail is concerned. You talked about many at the time, police officers,
That's
politicians,
right.
very influential people that you would not necessarily think would be involved in this, most certainly were proven to. And we hear this time and again. I was actually going to
Yes.
ask you whether or not Freemasonry was a part of your family's history. I don't think it was. You often hear about it, you know, figuring into stories such as this, unfortunately, but it was just the fact, I guess, your father was he was more interested in alcohol than caring for you, and your mother herself had been a victim as well. So Freemasonry, and then secondly, I suppose, uh, your mother, who's, you say, hated you to the day she died.
Yeah.
Have you got to the point where you've forgiven her, or is that
Oh
possible?
yeah. Oh yeah. So the Freemasonry part of your question, I hear that too. That's
Mm,
usually very involved. I
sure,
don't know.
that's right.
So it may have been, but I would have been too little to be able to like distinguish that,
The police and
but
politicians, most certainly, a lot of them
that
were,
was
you can
clear.
bet. But as far as your
Yeah.
parents, that's what I was getting at more than anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh, my parents,
probably
I
not.
don't think
Yeah,
so. I
right,
don't think,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think so. So yeah, but yeah, forgiveness. So
Mm,
that's one of my keys, that, I'll list on my QGRIT website that helped me heal was the forgiveness.
right.
And I forgave her, and I've been able to forgive all of the pedophiles and all of the medical people, and that was the grace of God, that I was able to do that. When I first started, so I knew the importance of forgiveness because it's not for them, it's for me. Because as long as I don't forgive, there are like energetic ties to these people, and they invade your world even though they're not here. And at first, whenever I started remembering, I would do it like a business transaction. I'm a businesswoman. So it'd be like, I forgive them. I forgive them. I didn't mean it. It wasn't in my heart at all, but it was the best I could do. And I know God honored that. And then the day came where I was able to forgive all of them. And a beautiful story with a beautiful story with my mom, probably 15 years before she died. She told me, she said she was always afraid of going to hell when she died, and rightly
Hmm.
so. And so she asked me, she said, I don't know if I'm going to go to heaven. And I hadn't remembered much at all by that point. And so I led her in prayer. And the day of her funeral, so she died a couple years ago. I never knew if that took or not because she never changed toward me. And forgiveness does not mean forgetting.
Mm,
So
that's right.
it means protecting myself, So the more I remembered, the more I stayed away from her because she was very verbally, emotionally abusive.
That's right.
And I just didn't need to expose myself
That's
to that,
right.
very unhealthy, or let myself anywhere near it. But again, forgiveness is for me. I was able to cut those energetic ties or spiritual ties or whatever word we want to use. But at her funeral, one of my little nephews was 4 at the time, and he came over to me and he goes, Lenny, and that's what all the little ones call me. And he said, you know that lady in the box? So he was talking about mom in her coffin, right?
Hmm.
And he said, she's standing right over there. And he said, she's got a big angel on that side and a big angel on that side.
Hmm.
So, so I knew that she was in heaven. I haven't seen her there. I've seen my dad there a couple of times. He passed several years ago, so I've seen him a couple of times when I was up there. But forgiveness is powerful, and it's for me.
Absolutely. How would, and once again, just to reiterate and emphasize that it does not mean forgetting. In fact, it's really necessary. It seems that we do remember in order to forgive. That's we processing these however deep the trauma, the scars actually go, transforming that energy, as you say, cutting the. It was energetic, dark energetic ties. Is that how you phrased it?
That's how I'd phrase it. I mean, people, there's all kinds of terminology.
Right.
Frankly, I think that we've been divided, a lot of us, by our terminology. I think
Totally.
that's part of the deep state plan, and that's part of what I'm trying to like bridge across between people of all faiths.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, there's some type of a tie where I'll hear people describe it. They take rent in your brain. You're constantly mad and upset about them. They're not even here. They could even be dead. But it's making you go crazy. And once you truly forgive someone from the heart, um, it doesn't. I mean, they have no more impact on you emotionally, spiritually, physically, nothing. It's like they're gone.
Right.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
how did your mother, after the way that she the decisions she made and what it led to in impacting your life in the way it did, how is it that she ended up in heaven?
Because she accepted Jesus as her Lord and Savior, and that's as simple as it. That's all it takes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And probably realizing that she had sinned, throughout the course,
Yes,
right? She was very sorry.
yes, yes. Well, and I told her that. I mean, I told her because she asked me. She said, "How can I make sure?" She said, "I'm afraid I'm not going to go to heaven."
Right.
And so I asked her, I said, and she knew the Bible, and I said, do you believe the story about Jesus? Do you believe he's the Son of God? Do you believe he was born of the Virgin Mary? Do you believe he came here for your sins? To your point, um, and that he died for your sins. So I told her about that, and she said she believed all that, and we prayed, and she asked Jesus to come into her heart and her life. And like I said, I didn't know if it ever took, if that's the word I can use, because she never changed toward me.
Your little
Um,
nephew. That's just amazing. Your little nephew,
yeah,
but you keep a close watch on him. It sounds like he's quite
yes,
gifted as
yes.
well. And a lot of yeah, so the young people especially, they have this way of like imaginary friends or things I've heard, as probably you have yourself, the stories time and again, as along these lines, the young people with their visions, and they're not just necessarily imaginary. That's just really amazing. So, finally, then, and welcome to Sir Valance. We want to give him a shout out as well. And as we wrap things up here, wind things down with Pirate Radio Podcast episode number 345, SRA, Satanic Ritual Abuse Survivor, Lynne Haggerman. By the way, from what I understand, Satan, and this is interesting to think. Was reflecting upon this leading up to our conversation, the history of Satan and the dark side, and how it all goes back to things like people talk about Baal worship, even Sabbatean, Sabbatai Zevi, 1666, and the way that with that particular I guess the synagogue of Satan is how I see it. I mean, what more can you say? That they trying to make sin become a virtue for some reason. The more you do these terrible things, the better you are within that sect. Better Jew, I guess you are, according to what he was trying to convince people of. So. Um, I don't know if you really want to get into that, the history and where it comes from. The Zoroastrian tradition, though, if you look at that, and I think that goes back long before, well, Christianity, obviously, but the warring forces of light and darkness, Ahriman, Ahura Mazda. I always get the two confused, which is the light and which is the dark, but it's like this endless cosmic, spiritual warfare, which we hear about in Ephesians. Quote you probably know off by heart. Let's hear that one. Like I'm sure you can.
What you like, Ephesians 6, our battle isn't against the um,
We read
flesh, but against the principalities.
of darkness.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
no,
right.
I can't rattle it, but I know what you're
Oh,
talking. Yeah,
a little
yeah.
more homework then for Lynn. For we wrestle not against flesh
Flesh
and
and blood,
blood. That's yeah.
but
So
against the principalities, powers in the dark realms and the heavenly places. You know a lot more about that topic though than I do. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, the research you've done there is incredible.
oh, I don't. What do you mean by that exactly? So
Well, when you were talking about the history and the
oh,
historical
Sabbatai
of
Zevi,
yes,
1666.
yes,
That's
yes, I've never heard of that.
oh
Yeah.
my god. Well, there's a famous Oprah episode actually where this Jewish young Jewish lady, she's rather large, and she really seems quite. She's scarred and traumatized. I like to know where she is today. I hope she's doing all right, but she was forced to do some pretty terrible things. Uh, in a similar context as to what you endured. That's actually one of the little items I was going to bounce off of you as far as asking whether you were made to hurt and torture and punish other children that were there. That's quite common that these sadists really get off on this. They it does something for them, I guess, you know. So was that something that you witnessed or were forced to do yourself?
So I witnessed that a lot. I have one memory where I was forced to do that myself, and that was at one of the national satanic conventions, because they have their conventions. At least it could have been international. It was really big, but they have their conventions like we do. It's just theirs are much different, and it was underground, and it was an amphitheater that would slope down to the stage, and that's where they would sacrifice the children. So there was one time where my part, I was a leader. I was being trained to be a leader by the time I was 3, which is hard for people to imagine. But Jessie Saboter is a friend of mine too, and she'll talk more at length about that if your audience knows her. But so I was supposed to, I was being groomed to be trained to be a leader, recognized as one and trained. And part of this was teaching. I remember there was a row of 2-year-olds, long row, and they were supposed to be trained on how to harm other children. And I knew the girl in front of me had already died, but I was still to teach them, and I would do anything in my power to sabotage whatever was going on, and not be compliant while trying to appear compliant,
Mm-hmm.
As much as possible, because I knew all this was wrong, and didn't want to.
Yeah.
So I tried that. So I partially harmed the girl who's already dead.
Mm-hmm.
But I was actually, that with that memory, I was caught, and the consequences were absolutely horrific,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't compliant.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but that I have just the one memory. I mean, so far, I like I said, I remember things. I'm not sure when this will ever end.
Well, it's an ongoing process, I guess, that each of us has to, depending on, everyone. Most people are not as severely traumatized as what you were as a young girl, obviously. But it's life is every day. Things that impact
Yes.
us and affect us, and it's one of the reasons I'm not. We haven't had a TV here, cable or nothing, for 15 years, and the internet is bad enough, and I get to the point where I just can't watch. I end up with too much in the way of, for lack of a better term, PTSD. These things, they scar us by, they say you
Yes.
are what you eat. Well, I do believe that it's not just food, but it also applies to our media consumption, pop culture, the music we listen to, as you mentioned earlier, the people that we associate with and include as part of our social circles and so forth. So, uh, and going back to Nikola Tesla, vibration and frequency. That's if we really want to find the truth in in the world and just the universe. So, last question, dealing with what Christ said, and this is all just kind of just stream of consciousness. I haven't had anything written down here other than just the thoughts off the top of my head and where the conversation has gone. So this is quite something. That's not exactly the way I usually do things, but I think we've had a pretty good back and forth rapport.
Yeah. I've
Last,
enjoyed it.
sure, it's been great. Thank you very much. The last point, dealing with Christ, and he talked about in the Bible. Well, we're not going to get into the whole born again business, which apparently is referenced 35 times. I looked into this, and it really is like, oh, that's interesting. 35 times. Wonder what he might have been going on about there. But leaving that aside for the time being, the state of one's heart. He would often. I'm not sure how many times he talked about this, but though their hearts are hard, was what he would say. Not only synagogue of Satan, of course, the Jews who say they are, but in fact, really, they're kind of like imposters, basically. I would argue, I think it's got a lot to do with what we're currently seeing unfold in Israel and that region at present, the genocide in Gaza, but leaving that out of they're getting too political. Just the condition and state of one's heart, and that didn't he say talk about be of good cheer? How did he put it exactly? The state of one's heart.
So the be of good cheer is in this world you will have trouble and tribulation, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world.
Ah, yes,
So
yes,
yeah, so
right.
that's that one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, he would talk a lot about um, be of good heart, be of good
Mm-hmm.
cheer. So and putting it in common every day, I believe it's a positive state of mind because which impacts your heart. What we believe is what we're going to think, and what we think is what we'll feel, and what we feel is what we'll do. And so, what we think is going to impact our heart, um, our feeling center too. So, I believe it's a gratitude. I one of my tools is gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
trying to live a life of gratitude because instead of focusing on what I don't have, to focus on what I do have.
Correct.
And when I was talking about, I didn't know when this would end. For example, with my memories, I want my memories back. They're mine. They were taken away from me, and that makes me whole. And every time I talk, like I'm just so grateful to be on your show tonight because every time I'm given the opportunity to speak, I heal more and more and more. But I think so much is a state of mind because nothing is changing in our world but our thoughts and how the battle is for the mind. And the Lord talked about that a lot too. There's a scripture in, I think it's Philippians 4. Don't be anxious about anything, but instead with prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard like a sentry your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And then it says, whatever's true, good, lovely, right, positive. If anything's like that, think on these things. So that's where our mind should be, which gives us the heart you're talking about.
Sure, and that's being clear in the understanding the fact that this world is not our home. Or that's what at least Christ talked about. I believe this is this world
Yeah.
is not my home. I think
Yeah.
so much with him and the Buddha. Don't know. You probably not looked. Well, maybe you have looked into it, but the parallels to me are really quite striking. Having overcome the world and the emphasis on love and so forth, and just the list is quite noteworthy. But that state of one's heart, and as we eudaimonia, I'm not sure. I often get confused if that was in the pre-show or not. Bringing that up, the ancient Greek koine term meaning literally the good spirit or demon within, and it just means happiness. So, which leads me to ask myself, what does it then truly mean to be genuinely happy? That's just one question. And if we can work on incorporating that and not being so, it's the, as they say in the New Testament, I believe, the blind leading the blind. But when we're in a position, because I was not myself, I was like homeless, not for a long time, back in the day, a couple days in the streets of Vancouver, and we've all suffered, we've all got our stories to share. So
That's right.
yeah, and it was not easy. It's enough for me. Thank you very much. But now that I'm in a position to reach out and connect with and help others, not you necessarily, although if you're willing to, if you're able to get something out of our and a little brief engagement here, that's wonderful. Hopefully there'll be something, both of us will, but mostly it's
Yeah.
for those who vote with their computer mice and choose to listen to what we've either done in real live time here or archived. So via Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, and Facebook, if they don't remove the the conversation that we've had. This feature show number 345 with SRA, satanic ritual abuse survivor Lynne Haggerman. Thank you so much, Lynne. qgrit.org and lynnehaggerman.com. I think I've got those two memorized, essentially. Your email being, can we hear the email address one more time, please?
It's my name, Lynn, at lynnehaggerman.com.
There you go. So I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like to add to that or not, but we're just going to work on putting a cap on things here, and thanking you so much for taking the time out. We're going to work on doing a little post-production here and get this off to you with the archive links as soon as we manage to take care of that end of the technical business. So you have a great weekend, Lynn, and
you too.
Yeah, and thank you once again to Robert Morningstar and
yes,
and others who were part of managing to bring you on board for that great show that can also be found in places such as Rumble and elsewhere. I think over on the Morningstar Report and your own personal Rumble channel. Happy sailing.
Yes.
Have a good
Thank
weekend.
You.
God bless.
God bless you too.
Good night. Okay, so we will let Lynn now go, of course, and enjoy the rest of her weekend. So, what a story. What a story. You know, this is something that, as I explained to her, tried to make very clear, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can understand, this is not for the weak of heart or the faint hearted. Well, at the same time, it's something that we need to recognize. Things that are done in the dark will be brought to the light. And I guess, as it lays out in Ephesians, we struggle, or rather wrestle, not against flesh and blood, spiritual principalities, maybe high spiritual principalities of darkness. So, how far back exactly this cosmic warfare? You know, it could be right to the ancient, origins of time, the universe itself. I have really no idea. It is what it is. It's utterly horrific. Major problem. It's, we talked the numbers, upwards on nearly closer to 1 million. Well, just with the Biden administration, with their open borders policy, and the one particular department that RFK Jr. now finds himself the head of Health and Human Services, I believe. Uh, you know, Given the fact that, Canadian expat living here in South Korea the past 20 plus years, hopefully people will cut me a little slack, give me a bit of a break when it comes to the American political structure and, scene. I try to do my best to keep up with things, but yeah, CPS, child pedophile services. Time and again, we hear these horror stories, corrupt judges and people just working as part of the, uh, part of that agency, institution, network, all under the guise of, you know, people, most people who really aren't that skeptical or take the time to look a little further, ask too many questions, thinking that the government is there in so many ways working to best serve the people's interests, when really it's, truth be told, all too often simply not the case. So, hope everyone has enjoyed the live stream. We didn't have to endure too many technical problems this go round, which was a good thing. And we're trying to get our Linux machine brought back up on have that in operation here. We're we were scrambling last night, looking around, trying to dig up this remote control that we need to turn on the television. So I'll have to go out and then maybe pick up one that can get that, get that job done, obviously, and reformat the Linux machine. So it just got to the point last night where I was really wanting to have that back up and running in support of this week's show with Lynne. So thank God, thank goodness that there were no major technical problems or lag to speak of. So no worries on that front. Hope everyone has not only enjoyed what we had to present here, or more than, not so much enjoy, obviously, as benefit and gain some insight as to the darker side of humanity, how some people, unfortunately, the life that they find themselves caught up in on so many different levels. And the more that we can do to expose what does take place and work to share with the world these sounds of freedom, clearly, the better. That's what we're here to achieve, providing once again a voice to the voiceless. On behalf of Captain Long John Sinclair and all the rest of the crew here down in Skullport Harbor, until we meet again via these high, often all too intrepid digital seas, I'm your host, as always, the Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer, reminding you, keep your ear to the ground and eyes to the sky. Tally-ho!
I know. There we be. Having carefully looked over each of our navigation panel instruments,
checking every level, switch, dial, cable, knob, and pulley, by all accounts and indications, we indeed see it's time, once again, to drop anchor inside Mystic Bay.
Draw an end to yet another week of World Pirate Radio Live.
Remember,
if you're looking for a little more animated online action,
keep in mind we've likely got yet another great free-flowing Rogues Gallery after show
coming up for the next hour in one of our more premium, exclusive, and remote digital underground online pirate hideaways. Also, if you yourself have a new,
novel, intriguing, or otherwise underreported idea, unique individual, or pressing item in mind, be sure to either drop us a line directly over on WPRPN.com or fire us a quick email
via Pirate One Radio at protonmail.com.
We're always open to exploring fresh creative suggestions, intriguing guest ideas, cutting-edge discussion topics, and captivating themes.
Remember, WPRPN.com member site subdomain links are also always available.
Great for artists, musicians, podcasters, bloggers, social media personalities,
or pretty much just any old land lover
looking to boost their online visibility, presence, and reach.
Basic personal profile accounts can be launched for just $60 per year.
Staking your claim now helps not only strengthen you and the network, we're also looking out for the little guy. That's right, folks. As much as half of all WPRPN's profits are redirected right back into the hands of the people who really need it most. Community charity. After all, we are the Robin Hood. You can further embark on your own personal pirate journey by either liking, sharing, commenting on, subscribing to, or just following us via virtually any mainstream social media platform, including Twitter, Facebook, Gab, or Minds.com. So don't forget to become engaged. Until we meet again out on the high digital seas, I'm your host as always, the ship's Chief Communications Officer, Jaffe Ryder. Tally-ho.